What a glorious day here in Philadelphia. Not necessarily for the basketball team, but certainly for the football team and the fan base around not just the area here, but across the country, celebrating the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl victory on Sunday night. And yes, we have to talk some hoops. We'll incorporate the basketball with the football a little bit here with this conversation as we hang out with you on a celebratory Monday. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Along with Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck, I'm Devon Givens. Bree with us, all of you in the chat. Thanks for hanging out with us on this Monday. Once again, it's a glorious one because, yes, we're going to talk the hoops. We have to talk the basketball. But first, I do have to get the thoughts from my teammates here on the show. Derek, starting with you. A total beatdown last night of the Kansas City Chiefs. The Eagles made it look easy in this one. They pick up the victory, their second Super Bowl in 5 years since they've been there, and this was 7 years. Sorry, this was a fantastic victory on Sunday night. Just an amazing time.
No, it was such a sort
What was the score, by the way, that you said?
84-3.
84-3.
It was in play until pretty late in that game. No, it was sort of like almost out-of-body experience because I'm not used to you probably can't tell because the way I cover the Sixers is sort of different than the way I react to almost any other sporting event. I'm generally a nervous wreck, and I mostly keep it, in and keep it like bottled up, and you don't really see it. But normally, I like to watch games alone, not because I like being alone, but because I need to pace. I need to do stuff to relieve the stress and get me from just not sitting there. And for that to be so stress-free, pretty much ever since those two interceptions really changing. I was talking to Devon a little bit before the show, but especially then when they came out in the third quarter and shut them down right away. That was when I was like, oh, this is going to be comfortable. This is going to be stress-free. And that is just not the way we as Philadelphia sports fans live. I spent the first 28 years of my life having never experienced the title. And even when they won in the past, it's not like even 08 with the Phillies. Yeah, they were ahead for most of the series, and you felt good about it, but it wasn't just pure domination. This was something I've never experienced before. I could certainly get used to it in a real way. But it was real quick, by halftime, I need to get down to Philly so I can, sort of experience not the game that we all love. Experience the event afterwards. And it was for the second half to be a no doubt about it, where I'm planning and let me grab my camera gear and let me grab this. And that's what I'm worried about at halftime, not the game. It was just really wild. It was truly.
Kyle, you experienced something as well. It was, you went to enjoy it also, like Derek did afterwards in the midst of the crowd. But before that, just your overall, your takeaway from what happened with the game. And then of course, what ensued afterwards.
I was trying to see how long I could keep the weekend at Bernie's thing going here while you guys started the show.
It was pretty good.
4+ minutes in here. And yes, I am amongst the living, everybody. So I felt good going into the game. I felt
Birds by a million.
Birds by a million. I felt great about this season and specifically how they matched up with Kansas City. But as you go through it, you still don't really comprehend the fact that they put together one of the best Super Bowl performances ever and one of the best playoff runs ever when you consider both the Super Bowl and the championship game were just dominant blowout victories, 14-3 in the regular season. You add everything up, and it was why I posted about it last night. I think they're certainly the greatest Eagles team ever, right? It just becomes a conversation about, are they better than the 83 Sixers relative to that season? And, they're neck and neck in so many different ways. But I'm 35 years old. I'm from this area. Most of my childhood is just even being able to be disappointed was an upgrade, right? The Sixers sucked for most of my first, 11, 12 years on earth until that 01 Sixers Iverson run. the Eagles were like constantly on the cusp early 2000s as I'm really getting into sports, but always coming up short, always falling short. And it just becomes like, oh, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like they're going to lose because that's what Philadelphia teams do. And I think what the Eagles have done over the last 7 years or so has completely changed that feeling for not just like kids who are growing up now watching the Eagles and watching Philadelphia sports, but like a lot of people who spent their whole lives like, man, the Eagles will never win anything. We're always going to come second place or even worse, not even really at the podium at all. And a lot of people now are coming to expect excellence out of this team. And that, like, I love that for this city because this city cares about their football team and their sports as much as anywhere on earth. And so it was just such a delight. Watching the game was good enough, but then being out on Broad Street, just kind of meandering with my wife and friends of ours, but then for a little bit, just finding people, not like, hey, I'd sent a text or I called somebody, just everybody is out sharing this big communal moment. Like that is what sports are about for me. It's why I love doing this. It's why I will come in here today to talk about the Sixers, even though we probably don't want to talk about the Sixers because we are still one big community processing all this together.
It really is, because we're all within the couple years of each other age-wise. People of our generation, like, you really thought the Eagles were never going to win a Super Bowl.
Never.
Like, you really thought this was never going – for it to happen twice in 7 years. I remember back in 2018, I never thought that – I truly, truly never thought that they would happen. Now, of course, since then they've been to 2, won here last night. But 2018 was just a watershed moment. It really, even though the Phillies got one in 2008 and broke sort of like the city curse, that 2018, it was something I never thought would happen.
Yeah, this was really cool because talking to Bree about it before we started going and just looking at how we'll all have our nerves for whatever it was. You pacing, at home, and Kyle, you doing what you're doing as you're hosting everybody, and I'm sitting there.
I can't do that, man. I cannot have friends and family over on a game that stressful.
Yeah,
I can't do it.
It's tough for me too. So I'm just sitting there, me and my daughters, and I'm in my spot. They're in their spots, and it's just happening. And we're like, wait a minute. Okay, this looks pretty cool. All right, damn it. How'd they just leave 3 points on the board right there? You needed that 3.
When it was 10-0, now I think 10-0 was the last time I was truly nervous.
Yeah, I was like, yo, we need that 3 back.
Yeah.
And then Cooper DeJean gets that interception. And even that, the Philadelphian in me, though, is like, all right, coming out of halftime, even though the Eagles did what they needed to do by scoring after that Zach Vaughn interception, hey, man, they're going to make their adjustments. I hate that this halftime is going to be 45 minutes long because I want those guys to get right back out there and keep going. They don't need a break. They need to keep going. No adjustments, just keep going. And once they went that 3 and out, and you saw that even with that adjustment that Andy Reid tried to make at halftime, they had no answers, man. And it was just so cool to see them sell out on Saquon Barkley, dare Jalen Hurts to beat them, and he did just that. And even when he threw the interception, I didn't care because I said to the guys last night when I joined the show, that was basically a punt that they pinned them inside the 5-yard line, and they already can't do anything against the defense. No problem. No problem. It's all good. And then it all happened, and look, it was great. It's great to see all of you in there talking about it. It was just a fantastic, fantastic night to be able to experience that too. As you said, Derek, that is really cool because I thought with the Andy Reid squads in the 2000s, with, McNabb and B. West and all those guys. And when they got T.O., I was like, oh, this is going to happen. And then it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't. And finally, to get these two, to see what it feels like, and Kyle and both of you saying, hey, man, this might be something that we can get used to. And it's fun. And by the way, all the national people.
We need the trilogy.
Have at it, man.
Eagles Chiefs third Super Bowl.
Oh, we need that.
Gotta have.
Gotta break the tie, right?
The rubber match.
Yeah, A.J. Brown said, hey, we can't do anything about that, but we can even it up. And that's exactly what they did last night. I love the fact that the national people are going to continue to bend themselves backwards to try to make excuses as to why Jalen Hurts is not a good quarterback. Have at it, because the man is a Super Bowl champion, the Super Bowl MVP, and your favorite quarterbacks outside of Patrick Mahomes, they can't claim that. they can't claim it. So there's that. So have at it. Enjoyed it. Glad everybody had a chance to experience that. And with it, we have to, before we do that, Bree, crack the mic. Come on, Bree.
What's up?
What was your night like? How'd you get through it?
I was scared, like I said, until like third quarter. I said no cushion is enough cushion. But by the fourth quarter, like I said, we all had our jackets on, ready to go to Broad.
Ready to go. How much time did you spend out there?
It's like 2 hours, but most of it was trying to get home, to be honest. So like 30 minutes actually in the crowd, 90 minutes trying to get home.
Bria, I hope you wore a pair of dirty sneakers and not one of your nice pairs of shoes to go out in.
My Air Forces are done.
Oh, if you see the front toe, my front right toe on these Air Forces, they are dead.
I'm gonna have to break out the magic eraser.
There it is. That is too good. Good stuff. But as we said, we do have to talk basketball. When something like this happens in your city, and you think, man, the Phillies have had their chance, they win one. Recently, they've gotten there, unfortunately, did not win. The Sixers having their run where it looked like as contenders they would get there, they have not. The Eagles cracking through and getting 2 in 7 years and losing 1. They have been fantastic. The Flyers, of course, finding their way, still trying to rebuild. But since we're a basketball show, we need to talk about, Derek, where it's a conversation of what do the Sixers have to do, and looking at what the Eagles have done to get to that point. We thought that they were somewhere in that mix. They are not. At least right now, they're not. Even before this season, after this fantastic offseason that the Sixers had, it's been a disaster at 20-32 through 52 games. We're 2 games left before the All-Star break this week. And what can they take away from a situation like this, whether it's the front office, the ownership, the players on the field, in this case on the court for the Sixers, that is going to get us like jealous of Bo and Zach and Fran and all of them for having to do a championship show. We haven't experienced that yet. Yeah,
I think it's clear you got to invest in the trenches. Like if you can get pressure with your front four without
100%.
Sending a blitz, like it is a cheat code.
It is a cheat code.
No, I mean, it's again, hat tip Danny LaRue. Ownership is the biggest competitive advantage in professional sports. And the Eagles have had stability there. The Eagles have had good decision-making there, with the exception of maybe one of the Chip Kelly error, I'll call it. They have been a really, like their coaching hires have been good.
It's crazy how the Chip thing worked out, because that first few weeks, everyone was like, oh my God.
It was truly, you thought he was revolutionizing the sport. Yeah. It flipped quickly. No, but like his coaching hires have been A+ for the most part. His GM hires, even if you have to get relegated to the basement for a couple of years, have been absolute A+. And if you make the right hires, the ownership has the right perspective and is able to evaluate people who have really not proven their ability in the role that they will assume, but they're able to read people, they're able to project people and make the right hires. That sets up everything. And the Sixers ownership group failed at that so spectacularly, and you're paying the price for that. You're still paying the price for that.
So I want to build off of that. Here is one of my main things that I think is true of the Eagles and is true of most great teams across all sports, that also this goes up to the ownership level but trickles down. Emotional leadership really matters. And I think one of the problems with, if you look at the issues with this Sixers team, and one of the things that Joel has said and many players say is like, when you don't have continuity, it's really hard every year to try to compete for something meaningful, right? Like you can be talented and you can get to the second round of the playoffs and you can win games, but like without the shared history, without the shared sense of purpose and meaning, and like putting on this jersey means something, like going into the trenches with these guys means something. It's hard in the toughest moments when you have to find something, a collective goal, a common thing to work toward together. It's hard to summon the strength to do that and go through adversity when you just don't have any shared history together. And if you take that up to the ownership level, as Derek points out, like Jeffrey Lurie has done an incredible job of running the Eagles. I think one of the reasons that Josh Harris if you're going to criticize him for not being good enough as an owner, you just can't be as invested as you would need to be or want to be as an owner when you own 2 other North American sports franchises, one of which you were a childhood fan of and you're clearly going to devote more time to. You also have you have a piece of a team overseas in England that you have to oversee, right? And so Lurie, part of the reason I think fans have come to really respect him beyond just winning a whole hell of a lot is like he doesn't micromanage, but when there are real moments of crisis, when it feels like, hey, this season has not lived up to expectations, you don't have to like go and find him, right? Like he will seek out the situation. There were stories when he would be in the locker room after games, like, hey, what's going on here? And trying to get the pulse of the team and understanding of like how things are working. And so if you don't have people like that at the top, that's going to trickle down to the bottom, right? People are going to treat emotional leadership as if it's not as important as it should be. And I would also direct this criticism at Daryl Morey. At one of the biggest knocks that I think is fair against Daryl for his whole career, not just in Philadelphia, is that it's a lot, it leans too heavily into like, this is a star and so that's the best thing we can do, and not taking into consideration as much the value of locker room guys, the value of the glue pieces and the continuity and all the other stuff. It's building an actual team. It's not just a fantasy roster with a bunch of guys who are names that's like, oh man, that looks great on paper. It's assembling a group that works together, works in cohesion, and has this shared sense of purpose. And so I think to put a bow tie on all this, it's look at Paul George. Great example. Paul George, very good basketball player. He's having a down season, but is still, a talented guy, two-way player, all that. But one of my big points of criticism for him over these last 2 months, I don't see a guy who is showing the level of desperation or desire to turn this thing around that you would want from someone who's supposed to be kind of an institutional stakeholder of this franchise. You give somebody $50 million, it's not just telling them, hey, we think you're really good at basketball. It's we think you're good at basketball and we think that you can help power this team forward. So that doesn't just mean making shots. It doesn't just mean defending. It means picking people up in the locker room. It means doing jobs that you don't want to do when guys are out and injured or just can't play for whatever reason or sick away from the team. And I don't see that. I don't see that from, I think the only person you really see emotional leadership from of the regular guys is someone like Maxey.
Yep.
Like wears it on his sleeve. We've heard the emotions he's shown. They need more guys to really understand what it should mean for them to be a part of a team that wants to win something.
Yeah, so after listening to you both just lay it all out there, and the leadership part is just really what stands out from top to bottom to the floor. And when Maxey, who's a fifth-year guard, not to say that a fifth-year guard can't be, but his role is to be the number 2 guy. He is the Robin to your Batman of what Joel Embiid is supposed to be. Paul George coming in to fill in that role. But also when you kind of think, and yes, they are 2 different sports, but it's just all about, again, the leadership. When you have those leadership groups that the captains are there for the Eagles, hearing about Lane Johnson and Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson being able to go into the office of the head coach during the bye week and say, hey, we need to change this up. We're 2-2, and we need to start focusing on the run game. And what has been discussed? Oh, well, the quarterback is not good enough because the run game has been so dynamic for what Saquon Barkley is. Doesn't matter to any of them. They won. They got it done. So the leadership, and we don't necessarily know what's being said, but we just know of 2 meetings so far this season where Maxey had to call out Embiid based on reports. And while Joel was okay with it, something leaked out and it still didn't help them turn things around. Then the other one from the Denver game where they got their doors blown off.
Tearing the paint off the walls.
Tearing the paint off the wall there in Denver. And yeah, they got a little bit of a kick in the you-know-what. They won that 4 straight. But then we start to see again where they've lost 3 in a row once again. So the leadership, who's in charge, how the message is being sent. And by the way, the players receiving the message and going out there and executing. Too many times in these 32 games where we've talked about, as the game is finishing, all four of us, hey, we're writing up the description for YouTube or we're writing up the headline, and we all say, well, we can't use effort again, because how many times have we used it?
Yeah.
Never do we really question that with the Philadelphia Eagles and their effort out there on the field. They are a machine that goes out there, and even after that 2-2, what was it, 10 straight that they won? They got after it. Yes, there were some things that were some bumps in the road that they even talk about. A.J. Brown reading his book on the sideline because he's unhappy. But of course, it's all about wanting to win. And we sit there and question this basketball team from every level of the organization, from the ownership to the front office, of what they have done. The last roster spot that Derek would be pulling his hair out that we got to call Dr. Glad about.
Well, hey, if they had filled that roster spot, they might not be under the luxury tax right now.
Hey, here's something you can learn from the Eagles. Fill the whole roster.
Fill the whole roster.
You start there.
Some good depth overall. and that's where I'll go. It's just that leadership it's obvious there with the Philadelphia Eagles. And not to say that there's no leadership with the Sixers, but something's not getting through for us to continue to keep talking about, and why you have to play the other 29 teams to get to the mountaintop of where you want to go. You have assembled some really good rosters. Something has been wrong, whether it's the star player, whether it's something else. Something has been wrong. The Eagles have figured something out where they have gotten back to 2 championships in the last couple of years, winning one, competing in the other, where most of us say if the field wasn't what it was, they might have had a really good chance of winning that one too. That's the frustrating part when you look at the basketball team compared to what's going on with this football team who hoisted that Lombardi trophy last night. Yeah. So we'll continue this conversation on the other side. We do have to squeeze in a quick break, talking about the Birds and what lessons the 76ers can learn from the success of the Philadelphia Eagles, now world champions for the 2024
You're damn right,
season.
Devon.
Absolutely. We'll come back. We'll get to it all. Continue the conversation right here on the PHLY Sixers the post-game show, the Sixers podcast. We've had so many games.
Brother, it's all good.
I feel like you've done that like twice in the last couple days.
We've had a lot of games. We only have 2 this week. How about that? The PHLY Sixers podcast on a Monday, a celebratory Monday for the Birds, right here, presented by Bet365. And yes, Bet365, our sponsor. I hope you cleaned up last night, folks, by placing those wagers, betting the quarterback getting the first score and an anytime touchdown. How about the star receiver, both of them getting into the end zone? And you know you love your defense, so you probably had defense scores against Kansas City, because all of that happened last night, and I'm sure you did it at Bet365, where 90 million users worldwide participate on this great app, having the live streams of 780,000 events a year. And with the early payout offers, and not just the NBA, NHL, MLB, but the NFL, you probably got paid out pretty early last night with the way that your football team was scoring. And with the live in-game betting, which is so cool, the one thing that you can do is, again, you see how the game is playing out. You can go right there to your app, place a wager that you see how the game is trending, and you can get right after it. The quarterback from Kansas City turning the football over, you got it. You can place a bet there, and the early payouts are once again so good for you. As far as basketball goes, while it is a Monday, I got to tell you about Tuesday. Tomorrow, they have the tip-off Tuesdays where you can place a qualifying parlay bet totaling $20 or more on Tuesday NBA games and get up to $25 in bonus bets. Terms and conditions, of course, apply. And with the football season over, you don't have to worry about that anymore because you did clean up last night. But with everything happening right now with Bet365, new customers can now get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. Win or lose, sign up, use code PHLY365, deposit 10, place a bet for $5, get $150 in bonus bets. If your bet wins or loses, bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Future, maybe repeating for the football team? You can do that right now. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
We also want to make sure we tell you about Ace Hardware Home Services. At Ace Hardware, they offer a wide range of residential maintenance, installation, and home repair services are available, including plumbing, heating, cooling, and electrical. They offer free estimates on equipment installation and replacement with trusted advisors and options that are best suited for your home and budget. At Ace Hardware Home Services, whenever they get ready for the next job, they remember what to bring. They bring experience, including local plumbers and techs that handle everything from repairs and seasonal maintenance to installations and upgrades. They bring understanding, meaning they listen to your goals and the job isn't completed until you're satisfied. And they bring helpful to your home so you can spend more of your time on the projects that really matter. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at www.acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project.
Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers podcast here on the Monday, presented by Bet365.
Not the post-game show.
No, that's why I took my time and said it slowly here on this one. So Kyle, I was looking at the Eagles and their record from they won the Super Bowl in 2017, and before that, 15 and 16, they were 7-9. After they won the Super Bowl, they lost in the divisional round with a 9-7 record, lost in the wild card game, 9-7 record, and then they went 4-11 the year after that. Mm-hmm. So they had to do they need to clean some things up. That was Doug Peterson's last year. There were some things about him wanting to keep his coordinators, speaking to the front office and the ownership group. They had some disagreements on who should stay. Doug Peterson ultimately leaves. We know what happened. He just got fired by the Jacksonville Jaguars. But since then, Sirianni takes over 4 years, comes back 9-8, losing the wild card game. No problem. Year one for a first-time coach. Second year, gets to the Super Bowl. Last year, we know they got off to a fantastic start. It spiraled out of control. Took them 9 days to figure out if Nick Sirianni was going to stay here or not. And Jeffrey Lurie made the right call of keeping him. He comes back and wins the Super Bowl. During some of that time in there when the Sixers were rebuilding after they tore everything down, there were some real conversations in the city about, hey, we know this is a football town. This is an Eagles town. But the Phillies and specifically the Sixers, are they
on the rise?
Are they on the rise? And now is it their city? And
which, by the way, was silly even at the time because, like, the Birds are king. The
Birds could
know
be
that.
9-8, and it will be their city.
Right, but the conversations were being had of, hey, man, this team is pretty good. And while the Eagles are just saying, hey, we don't want to grab hold of it, even though it's our title, the Sixers were there. And here we are where second round after second round after second round exit, some first rounds, and now this. We're not having that conversation anymore. That is long over.
So I'm glad you brought something up there, Devon, that 9-day decision-making period where they ultimately end up keeping Nick Sirianni as the head coach. I think another way that you see how important ownership is, right, is like it's not just always doing what you think everyone wants you to do, right? Mm-hmm. Like the Sixers, for a lot of the time I've been covering the team, are very attuned to what is being said about them, good or bad, right? Like at times when it's like, hey, they're on the rise, I think they're high on their own supply a little bit. And then as they get criticism, if they feel that it's unfair, it's like you get the pushback on that at times. And they do have a very firm understanding most of the time of what's being said. And I'm not saying that means, they heard what people think about Doc Rivers, and that's why you fire Doc Rivers, or they float candidates through the media that get leaked, and that's why they hire Nick Nurse versus anybody else. But I do think on the other side of it is Jeffrey Lurie, who he had to listen and not even just during that 9-day period where we're all waiting to hear the news of what's going to happen. It was a lot of the lead in to this season, right? Like a lot of people who I trust, who cover the Eagles, who talk about the Eagles, are like, hey, what is the dynamic like between Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts? Like, do your head coach and your quarterback, are they in sync? Do they get along at a level high enough to win at the highest levels together? Well, clearly the answer is yes now. But if you're Jeffrey Lurie and you're hearing all these things and you're feeling pressure from the outside to say, maybe I should fire this guy, the easy thing to do is just take the short-term win and say, okay, a lot of fans want this guy fired. I'll fire him, and we'll get somebody else in here who's good, right? We have a great organization. We're a place people want to work, blah, blah, blah. And instead, he said, you're going to stay, but some changes need to be made. You're going to do X, Y, Z. You're going to be in this box, this type of role. and charted out that path forward with him, Howie Roseman, Sirianni, and then like the rest of the football brain trust. And that is what leadership is, right? It's not always just doing what feels like the easiest decision at any given time. It's trying to chart the best path forward, even when you have to deal with adversity, even when you have to take some lumps from the public, take some lumps from people like us, and just keep that thing moving forward as much as you can.
Yeah. You can go to 2 decisions from the Eagles recently. The one you brought up was Sirianni, and then bringing Howie Roseman back in the lead spot.
That's a huge one.
Wildly unpopular at the time. Both of them absolutely the correct decisions. And you go back to the Sixers, there have been a couple, obviously the, moving on from Hinkie because there was so much pressure coming down. Josh was very attuned to that pressure, did not like that kind of scrutiny, just sort of wanted it to be gone. And then there's also, remember when Mark Stein, before Game 7 of the series against the Raptors, reported that Brett Brown was either going to be fired or his job was in jeopardy based on what happened in Game 7?
Yeah.
That got out, and a lot of the report, and look, I met Brett after Game 7. I will just say, based on the interactions that I had with him, he thought his career in Philadelphia
was dead
over.
man
He
walking.
was basically saying his goodbyes. So I think he absolutely believed that he was fired if he lost that game. And some of the blowback, I think, convinced Josh Harris not to fire him at that time. And you can have your opinion on whether or not that was a right call or not. But Josh Harris is absolutely very sensitive to the kind of pushback that Jeff Lurie has been willing to push through. And if you have convictions, if you actually believe in what you are doing, you do not look, we in the media can try as hard as we want to not be reactionary. Mm-hmm. You as fans, almost by definition, are reactionary. It's part of your job. You're a fanatic. It's in the word. You as a decision maker cannot listen to that. It is your job to have firm beliefs based on evidence and based on hours and hours and years of studying and coming to conclusions. You follow that through. And the Sixers have not done that enough. And the Eagles, to their credit, have made some very tough decisions, very unpopular decisions that have come back and paid dividends for them.
Yeah, and you think about the Sixers part of it, where you go back to the very, 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 very tough situation of the front office from the Colangelos, where that took place with the Sam Hinkie part. And you both know how I felt about the whole rebuild thing. It was just a weird situation, though. But again, if your ownership stands up and says, hey, no, this is what we're doing here. I got this from here, and not give in to the league, if you will, because everybody points out the Adam Silver piece. That is one that, again, we don't know what it was going to look like, but that may have veered this franchise and this organization to the wrong place. Now, it's not the knock at Daryl Morey. Daryl Morey has had a fine career. It's just simply pointing at, again, how things are viewed on the outside and what you don't worry about how it looks. We know that, hey, I was on the radio, and I know that when on the radio, those organizations, they listen. Whether they say they listen. They know what's going on, okay? So they have their ear, because as the guys just said, you guys are fans, you are fanatics, and while you don't want to be the ones to listen, per se, to the fans and then be sitting with them because you got fired, they are also the pulse of the city that you are an outsider in, that came in to take this job and to run this organization, to bring the fan base that you talk about. And even it's something as simple as, I mean, come on, y'all. When Kyle brought up owning 2 franchises that are right up the street in both directions, and then a simple tweet that you have always done when the Philadelphia Eagles advanced to the Super Bowl, people were ticked off about something like that.
That's just clown shit. Like, that was absolutely ridiculous.
It's really simple. All right, your feelings are hurt. Your team lost. I got it. I'm not a billionaire. I don't know what that feels like. But when you buy into it, that's part of the gig, man. And when you do something like that.
And they did eventually, like, they had a ton of them at the game, and
they did.
But it's like,
and to your point, like, I don't know if Josh Harris actually said, like, don't send a congratulatory tweet, but if you have a culture where your employees don't know if they can send a congratulatory tweet,
that's a problem.
That's your fault.
That's
your
problem.
Fault.
Yeah, that is absolutely a problem. Yes, they sent one out last night after they won immediately. Fantastic. But again, when you do something like that after winning the championship, but you don't, and you wait 48 hours or 24 hours or whatever the hell it was to send out the congratulatory tweet there for something as simple. And hey, Devon, it's just a tweet. That's the way of the world now with what they do. And they've shown you that they have that support there, and they do that. This is where part of the problem comes in the frustration. Hell, yesterday we're sitting there watching the game. They look like they're about to get their doors blown off in the second half. And then by the way, in the second quarter, this report drops from Lisa Salters talking about your franchise player may need surgery. The Sixers weren't supposed to be here. We were supposed to be talking about them in the same breath as the Eagles. May not have won, but getting there, being a consistent team that is getting to that spot of a Eastern Conference Finals, and then eventually to an NBA final to compete for a title because you have one of the 5 best players in the world leading your basketball team. But instead, we're talking about another surgery. We're talking about another early exit in the playoffs. We're talking right now, I'm sure later in the week, play-in stuff for this basketball team where it shouldn't be. And this Eagles team, again, is the gold standard, as you put it there, in there. So what did we come to a conclusion of what the medal is that the standard is right now for
not gold?
If the Eagles are the gold standard, Bree, what are the Sixers here as we look at the level of medal here for the Philadelphia 76ers?
The zinc standard?
The zinc standard?
The brass standard?
They got to get by that. They got to get by that.
I have no idea, honestly. I'm trying to what's fake gold made out of? Do we know?
I don't know.
It's usually just gold plated, isn't it?
Gold plated.
Well, I think there's a difference between gold plated and like actual fake gold. So it's
I guess if you shine bronze the right way, it kind of looks like
a little
gold.
Copper, in
yeah.
The copper standard.
Copper standard. That's not good enough.
Disrespectful to copper because I feel like people sell copper wiring for if you're hard up on money, you take some copper wiring, go down to the anyway.
Yeah. But
the Martian said the coal standard.
The gold-plated standard, as Martian says, aluminum foil standard from Gene and Martian as well. But that's where we should not be when we're talking about this basketball.
So I think everything that we've said so far, you're just saying that Morey needs to stop playing around with the Celtics and just buy the Sixers. It sounds like that's what we're saying.
I mean,
I didn't say that, but maybe a meeting needs to happen. I don't know. And look, I know that, and we joke, hey, they need to have a conversation. Football is different from basketball. But when you're talking about just the leadership from the top, that's where it starts.
Right. Because it's hard to take the roster building stuff and translate it because football is such a different sport in that way. Like Derek made the joke. There is no version of like build through the trenches, right?
Yeah.
That's just, it's not a thing. You need a main star. You really probably need 2, and then you need a whole lot of different things around those players. And so I'm not going to try to tell you, well, listen, if they draft a defensive lineman at this spot, then they'll be better. But
you know what is another tough decision that they had to do? They draft Jalen Hurts. I thought it was a mistake when I did that draft that night. And it wasn't because I didn't like the player. It was because, hey, man, they need other stuff here. Why are you taking another quarterback after you gave your franchise quarterback a franchise contract that offseason? What are they doing?
Honestly, that's the one that reminds me the most. Like, people get on Hinkie for drafting 3 centers. He was just drafting players until he found one that hit.
Right.
That reminds me of that. You don't care that you have a quarterback if you don't believe in the quarterback. You don't care if you have 2 centers if you don't believe in them. You got to get the one to build your team.
And I'm like, what are they doing? But it worked. They knew better than, of course, I did in doing that. And a tough decision that was made was, I'm getting rid of the guy that I paid all the money.
Yes.
And I did the contract so well that it doesn't really affect my cap. Different sport, but within the rules of their particular sport, their respective sport, to make a tough decision like that, make a mistake like Martian brings up, drafting Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. But you know what? Let me go get A.J. Brown and then also draft Devontae Smith. By the way, we looked at what they got from the Carson Wentz deal. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and all those picks. Jalen Carter, Cooper DeJean. Those are the 4 players that they got back in that particular deal around the Carson Wentz. So another tough decision that you have to get the ownership approval on to make a decision like that, and you get 4 home runs just like that. By the way, on Bet365, do you want to know who the favorites are for the Super Bowl next year for Super Bowl 60? It's a tie. Even numbers right there at plus 650 for your Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles and their opponent, the Kansas City Chiefs. The disrespect continues.
The trilogy, baby.
It continues. We come back. We finish off the conversation here on this Monday. We got 2 games this week, back-to-back, Tuesday and Wednesday. Those are the last 2 games before the All-Star break. We'll hang out with you for a little bit more here and kind of preview what the week looks like right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast on a Monday, right here on the Bet365. Never ordinary.
Talking about the gold standard around here. You know who really has the gold standard? That's our friends at Golden Nugget Jewelers. For the past 30 years, Golden Nugget Jewelers has operated out of the very same location in the heart of Philadelphia. And because they're in the heart of Philadelphia and because we're so connected to so many other places around the region, people from all over the place are coming here, from New Jersey, from Baltimore, from New York City, from all across the state of Pennsylvania to go to Golden Nugget Jewelers and find the perfect engagement ring, the perfect wedding band, or look, they have a lot of other things too, high-end watches, sparkling diamond necklaces, bracelets, earrings, all kinds of stuff. I said it yesterday. I'll say it again. Valentine's Day is almost here. I hope you're not buying a last-minute engagement ring, but there are plenty of awesome last-minute gifts that your partner will appreciate now and appreciate for a long time moving forward, because Golden Nugget Jewelers is giving you high-quality stuff built to last. And by the way, you can receive a final cleaning and a written appraisal with every engagement ring purchase. So if you are, I've been there before. I've made an engagement ring purchase before. Thankfully, it was successful. If you want the best one and the best service from highly trained staff and experts, Gold Nuggets got you at 8th and Chestnut in downtown Philly. You deserve the expert and the best price. Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. Visit goldennuggetjewelry.com today to learn more.
All right, and I want to tell you about our good friends at Rothman Orthopedics right now. Again, the big fella. He's dealing with that issue, and he might have to have a knee surgery. Well, look, I know they have the great doctors there. They have a fantastic team. But if he does, in fact, need surgery, and guys oftentimes want those second opinions also, well, Rothman Orthopedics is the place for you, whether it's the joints aching, the hands cramping, your back is out of whack. Rothman has you covered. And if you want to get back out there on the floor or whatever thing you like to do, gardening, running, whatever, they got you covered at Rothman. They're Rothman Orthopedics, and they specialize in you. Rothman's 200-plus fellowship-trained physicians subspecialize in specific areas of the body and a multitude of orthopedic services, including hip, knee, shoulder, spine, elbow, all of it. They have you covered. And Rothman proudly serves dozens of communities across Pennsylvania and New Jersey with 30-plus convenient offices, urgent cares, and walk-in centers. The message is out there so well that I recently got a call over the weekend from someone very close to me and was like, hey, I know you always talk about Rothman. I think I need to make a quick visit for this particular thing. Where should I go? And I sent them right to and directed them right to Rothman. And for more than 50 years, Rothman has participated in thousands of groundbreaking research and clinical trials with the goal of advancing knowledge, developing treatments, and improving outcomes for the benefit of our patients. And Rothman Orthopedics specialize in orthopedics and you and me. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today. Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers podcast. Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck, Devon Givens, Bree, hanging out with us. Also, as always, all of you, great to see you on this Monday. I thought, Kyle, when you guys were out there, I'm seeing these videos. I'm like, oh, we're going to have to call Rothman for some of these people lighting fireworks with their hands. Little JPP situation.
I told you guys before the show, I'm pretty sure I saved one girl with a few strangers. I saved a girl from probably busting her head open, falling off one of those bus stops.
Yeah.
When you're walking by and you just see the people up there, one, you're making sure nothing's going to be thrown near you or whatever, but also watching people slip and slide. And like, I am not an acrobat when I drink and when I walk. 2 feet on the ground is all I'm good for. And that's all most people are good for in that spot. So it's fun to gawk at the people up there, but you never catch me on any traffic lights or lamp poles or bus stops or anything else.
Yeah, no, there's no way. I was carrying my camera. The only thing I cared about was making sure my camera was okay. That was it.
Oh, man. Yeah, Rothman, I got you covered, though. Well, we got the parade coming up, so people will still be climbing on the light poles and all of that stuff, man. And just be careful out there, everybody. I know everybody got through safely, we think, last night. The parade is upcoming, and we know you like to, and it's a Friday. You're going to take off Friday and have the rest of the weekend? Be careful. I don't want to have to call Rothman for any of you folks out there. Also, this one, as we talk about the Sixers and the Eagles, the one thing that also came to mind while you were doing your Golden Nugget read was getting that ring, but the Fangio piece of it, making another tough decision, where they got screwed the last time because of the rules and Jonathan Gannon being a little sneaky, talking to the Arizona Cardinals and how that screwed everything up, where, you had to make a little switch there and you go to Sean Desai. That does not work. What do you do immediately? Get that guy out of here. All due respect, shake your hand and all. We're going to go get the guy that we really wanted in Vic Fangio. And by the way, shout out to the Dolphins players, Javon Holland, Cam Smith, who said Vic Fangio was a joke and kick rocks and get out of here. He wasn't a good coach. How are those guys feeling right now after having
big L for
the
you,
best
bozos.
defense in the NFL after week number 4? But again, a tough decision right there for your defensive coordinator. And you go out there, you don't get with a younger guy where everybody's trending. You go with this old grizzled vet that you wanted in the first place, and you bring him back and you let him do his thing.
Yeah, and it really just goes back to conviction. Like, you have to have that kind of conviction to not follow the trend, to not listen to what everyone is saying.
And it wasn't the coach's choice.
Yeah. It really was one of the most remarkable one-season turnarounds I've seen in quite a while. That defense was truly stunning.
I was too young to really appreciate when it was Jerome Brown and Reggie and Eric Allen and those guys. But, I watched a lot of good defenses, right? Those Andy Reid teams with Jim Johnson had great defenses with a lot of, if not Hall of Fame, slightly below that level, right? A lot of great iconic players. Certainly Brian Dawkins was my favorite player, along with plenty of other people growing up. And to see this team just because, for a long time it was, it's, have you ever seen that meme of it's a drawn horse? And the back of it is perfectly detailed and shaded. Yes. And the front of it's essentially a stick figure. Yep. That's what it felt like for a long time watching the Eagles defense, where they'd spend all the resources and money on the boys up front, the big boys. And I do think the defensive line is the most important part if you're kind of weighing the scales. But then they wouldn't spend resources on corners and safeties and certainly not linebacker. Yeah. Well, the linebacker thesis,
he's about to get paid.
Came through because he made nothing this year, and Zach Bond had an all-time Eagles linebacking season. Yeah. But they finally said, we're investing in our secondary. We're spending first and a second on young guys, and more importantly, and this is a thing that maybe we can say the Sixers are kind of doing okay, empower the young guys. Let the young guys play. That was one of the biggest reasons that they came out of the bye, and all of a sudden it went from season's kind of teetering a little bit. It's they're
Avonte Maddox to the bench.
Yeah, they had to make some tough choices and say, look, I know that this guy is a bigger name with a longer resume and all this stuff, but sorry, buddy, the future is now. And by getting these guys out there in week 6, that means by the time the playoffs start or you get deep into December, if you were in a tighter battle for the division, and it was reasonably tight, these guys are ready for those moments. There is no we have to just throw them out there and hope something happens. That takes time, it takes patience, and it does take living through rookie mistakes and rookie roller coaster and all kinds of stuff like that. So I do think the Sixers have done an okay job of that this year, but this really needs to be a constant, right? I actually think an NBA team that's done an okay job at this, as much as I take jabs at their fans, is the Denver Nuggets. Mike Malone has been very transparent about, look, and this was more last year than this year. Last season, they spent a lot of the regular season giving the younger guys rotation minutes and rotation spots that maybe they weren't ready for yet, but he said outright, we need these guys later. We need these guys this year and next year and in the years ahead because of the CBA forcing people out with the salary cap and guys chasing the money elsewhere. And that pays dividends. So you need to have a constant eye, and that has to be the coach, right? The coach has to, that's very hard to separate. I want to win tonight and this game really matters with, I need this guy to be ready by April, May, and June. And so That's something the Eagles did great this year. It's what great organizations do in general. And I think the Sixers are okay at it, but I think there's always room to improve on that. And I think that was really striking watching Cooper DeJean take it to the house last night.
Denver's a great point of that too, because at this time last year, people are going like, oh, all that investment in Strother and Brown, it looks like it is not working out. It looks like they might have missed, and now they're sitting here, they're not going to have the depth. Well, now they're playing good basketball, and they're contributors to that team. If there's one good to take away from this truly dreadful Sixer season, I mean, truly dreadful, it's that with Bona, with McCain, with Edwards, you have a hint of that. You have something to build on. If they can be legitimate pieces of like a 9-man rotation, and right now it's looking pretty good for all three of them, to be quite frank.
I would agree.
That is a huge, huge win. Now, it doesn't matter if your top 3 aren't playing like top 3. It doesn't matter if your 4 through 6 aren't viable. But if those other things, if they can square that away, at the very least, it does seem like they have something to build on, at least with role players in their young kids.
It also comes to starting with Kyle, and of course, Derek, you're right there, and then Rich follows. It's the coach, where you got to get away from the Kyle Lowry thing.
You just have to.
And what happens when you see here? I can give you a number of examples from the Eagles. Let's go in the offseason. They gave Bryce Huff 3 years, $51 million. What did he do? He was inactive last night.
Didn't play.
You know who played? The rookie who they drafted in the 3rd round, who didn't get those early snaps.
Yes.
Also, tough decision. Hassan Reddick. We all wanted to keep him, right? Hey, Howie, figure it out. He figured it out. But it wasn't with giving him a contract that didn't fit within what they wanted to do. The other one, to your point of the young guys, but they had a disgruntled situation. They had a really bad situation with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson when he left. What did they do? They had issues in their secondary. They brought him back. He's a Super Bowl champion. They cut Darius Slay. Fan favorite. Bring him back at a restructured deal. He's going out he said wants to play one more year. He hope it's here. If not, he just helped you win the Super Bowl. So when we talk about the tough decisions, the coaching decision of Vic Fangio saying, hey, somebody else brought it up. Now, I apologize. They brought up Devin White, who we were like, yeah, Devin White's coming in here. He's going to be good. No, Zach Bond on a 1-year deal is going to get paid because Vic Fangio, as a coach, figured out, hey, he's not an outside backer. He's an inside backer, and I can use him this way. And it worked. So it's just example after example after example, from the coaching to the front office, of how they hit, that we can even use as an example with the 76ers. Nick Nurse, we love Kyle Lowry too. Rooted for him. He's a Philly guy.
Philly guy who I would have loved to see come home and make a huge impact.
Yes. But you know what? Maybe you do have to hand the ball to Quentin Grimes. Maybe you do have to hand the ball to some of these other young players and give them an opportunity and see where it goes from there. And again, we just laid out a bunch of examples that the Eagles had to make those tough decisions, and it worked.
So a small version of this is going to be playing out over the final 30-something games. It's the Bona Drummond decision, right? Because I think we all see Yabu is ahead of both of those guys easily. And it doesn't even really matter what the position is necessarily. But if Drummond comes back and starts playing games, it's like, well, you're not you're not helping the team in the short term, because Drummond's been the worst option of their bigs this season,
Not
just
even close.
point blank, for whether it's himself or just the fit problems, whatever. And so you're not serving yourself in the short term, and you're not helping yourself in the long term either, because as we've seen with Adem, as he's gotten consistent playing time, he's built some confidence. He's starting to do some things that were, when he's coming out in the draft, it's like, this guy just straight up can't do this stuff. It is either not good enough at it or is not confident at it.
Can't do a dribble handoff because he can't dribble or hand off.
Right. And so now he's executing fake dribble handoffs and, 1-2 dribble to the rim for a dunk. He's done a great job of, he's showing the switch defensive skills at times that I think we were hopeful for coming out of UCLA. So like, that's an example of one of those decisions that you have to make, as that's not just Nick Nurse, right? That's an organizational thing where you have to be willing to say, hey, look, we made, I'm sure, promises of some sort to Drummond. You paid him a bit more money, but he hasn't been good when he's played. So play some younger guys, see what you got, and then that sets you up not just now, but moving forward as well.
Admit the mistakes when they happen, man. I mean, Derek was skeptical. Me and Kyle were like, no, this is a good move with how they signed Drummond. And look, we all came to the conclusion, this may not work. And while we weren't quite sure.
And I'll be clear, Drummond's been worse. I was skeptical. He's been way. I can't say I predicted this.
No, this has been bad. So it's tough. And look, man, if you do, Bree has this video we wanted to show. When you win, you get to do stuff like this here, like the quarterback going to. I didn't even know they still did this.
He actually went to Disney World?
Let's go to Disney World. Him and his fiance right there.
Oh, dude, that's so good. I'm with you. I had no idea they still did that.
I didn't know. I saw the commercial last night.
Maybe he's bringing it back. He's trying to restore the feeling.
There it is, man. There it is. So it was last night. I saw a video where somebody was saying, oh, look, Jalen Hurts did the video. I'm like, no, they didn't. And at the end, he said, I'm going to Disney World. It's like, oh. And saw that, sent it to Bree. Thank you, Bree, for running that. And while it's not the same thing in the NBA, we just want to be able to see them celebrate like that and have the fans come together.
I want to see them at a club in Vegas the night after the championship.
No doubt about it, man.
I'll never forget when the Cavs won their title against Golden State. That all the video and whatnot that came out of their detour to Las Vegas on the way back to Ohio was pretty great as far as I can tell. J.R. Smith with
shirt.
He was full weekend at Bernie's after that one.
Yeah,
that was,
no shirt for like a week.
He seems like a fun guy to win a championship with.
Oh, I could definitely hang out with J.R.
He might get in your way of trying to get to a championship, but once you get there, he was fun.
Yeah, man. All right, guys. Last two games here, starting with Toronto and then Brooklyn on Wednesday in Brooklyn. And just a quick, what are you guys looking for these last two games before the All-Star break?
For them to not lay down and die?
Yeah, I got no freaking idea.
I mean, I think
I gotta ask.
We spent pregame yesterday talking a lot about this team sucks defensively right now, right?
Sucks.
And so
yes,
if you can't manufacture some stops over the next couple of days, I don't know. I'm at a point where I need to see that, again, the guys who should be the stakeholders, right? The institutional leaders, I need to see that they want to turn this thing around. And I don't know that I see that right now. It was happening with some of the young guys, right? When it was Maxey and a bunch of backups, basically. But with Joel and Paul out there, it's just like, Olay. That's all I'm seeing right now. So I want to see some actual commitment and competitiveness from these guys. Got to do something on defense. That's just the bottom line.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you can't get stops against the Raptors and the Nets, like, why even go out in the second half of the season? Like, can we just forfeit the last 25 games or whatever it is? Like, the effort, communication, attention to detail, that's really it. Joel can come out here and go 1 for 15 on jumpers. I don't really give a darn. Give me that effort. Give me that communication. Give me that attention to detail. Show me that you're annoyed. And, like, that's why, of all the things, him and Kelly don't really tick me off, because even if it's not the right response, at least there was a little bit of emotion to it.
Yeah.
I need something to give me that, like, you are going to come out here in the second half of the season, and we all know the mountain they're going up against. At least you're going to try. Like, if you're going to be running the guys out there and not trying to get your draft pick, at least have the old guys try.
All right. Before we get out of here, I did want to ask you guys one quick Eagles thing. It's going to be quick. You guys just run through it pretty quickly. But did want to say everybody who's watching on Fast, we appreciate it as we get ready to continue the show. Just for a few more minutes, make sure you check us out at allphly.com. Also, sign up for the Die Hard membership by reading their stories from my guys here, my teammates here, and certainly all the great stuff that Zach and Bo and Fran and Les have been doing and covering the Eagles and their championship, their Super Bowl run. It's all at allphly.com. Great community, great written stories by all of the guys from the Eagles. You know how much I love working with these guys and their writing. I'm jealous of it. Make sure you go read allphly.com and watch the rest of the show. And so I wanted to ask you guys this real quick. Derek, who do you feel the best for after a Super Bowl win like that? Team related, not fans, because of course you feel
that's an easy answer for me.
All right, well, you go first.
BG, easily.
Yeah.
Like,
And we were talking about this before, sure. I was a little concerned him coming back with all that layoff and like actually getting on the field. But he was fine, and it's a great story.
Brandon Graham's whole career story is awesome because, and I'm in this boat, right?
He was killed.
I was one of the many people who was like, you needed a safety.
Yep.
Earl Thomas is there.
Sitting right there.
And during that initial period, right, BG struggles a little bit early in his career to get going, and Earl Thomas is ripping off like all Pro Bowl seasons. They're super successful in Seattle, and it's like, why did this bozo take this undersized defensive lineman from Michigan instead of the clear-cut fit? And he just worked, man, like worked and was relentless and was such a great competitor that he got to be part of the only two teams in Eagles history, to win the Super Bowl, and went to another one, right? Like, this guy has been part of an essential part of
15 years,
the greatest period of Eagles history ever, pretty easily. And
he's got one more than Earl Thomas too, right?
Hey, man. So I just think like the story of him just fighting to get back, right? To be available for this game, knowing that this was the last ride, and like he didn't want to just get the token ring, right? Like, oh, I was out injured and we had enough depth and we still won and you get the ring. He wanted to get back to experience that and be part of that and try to, even if it's, I don't even know how many snaps he ended up playing last night, even if he's playing 10 snaps, it was like, I will do everything in my power to get on the field with my guys. And I think the respect for him now in Philadelphia is universal, right? Like, he is just,
he's an all-timer.
That is what a great athlete looks like, plays like, feels like. And on top of all that, I don't know him personally, but people talk about how great of a guy he is, like upstanding dude. So like,
great guy.
Shout out to BG, baby.
He said he's going to come on the show. I'm going to get him to come on the show. As long as the Eagles guys don't feel like we're stepping on their toes, but he said he wanted to come on, talk some Sixers. So we'll get BG
anytime,
to come on the
BG.
Show.
Open invite.
Not only Earl Thomas, but Jason Pierre-Paul went right after him
Yeah,
too, and he
and
came
there
out
was
of the
early
flying.
season,
He had
early
a
career stuff.
Pro Bowl, like second year in the league. He was incredible. So Brandon was under a lot of scrutiny.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely. And this is an easy one. But
Leadership. He did not play, to your point, a lot of snaps last night. He gave those to those younger guys, and Nolan Smith and Hunt. Of course, Nolan Smith was rolling, so you can't take him off the field. But Hunt probably played more snaps than him last night, to your point. And it was effective. So the leadership and mentoring those guys and saying, hey.
So I was going to say, if you want to tie that to Joel, I don't get too wrapped up in is Joel on the sideline or not for when he's out hurt or whatever. But like, think of everything you hear about BG during the period where he's hurt, right? Like, you hear so many stories about like, he's around and he's like such an active voice and he's trying to do everything he can while not physically being able to be on the field. And like, that should be something that Paul and Joel and all these guys who have missed time and will more than likely miss time in the future, take something from that, man. Like, look at that guy. He is now, by any measure, one of the most successful athletes in the history of this city. And he dealt with a mountain of BS when his career started. A lot of people didn't think he was going to make it. A lot of people would have rather had other people early on. And his jersey will be retired. He is going to be a legend in this city forever. And part of that is he understands what it means to be a teammate and a part of a team. It's not just getting the moment of glory in the previous 2 Super Bowls ago, the previous one you won, getting the strip sack and having that. It's all the other stuff. It's the bumps along the way. It's being there as a teammate and lifting people up and doing whatever you can to try to help your team be as good as they can be. So love that he got a second one. Love that he's able to ride off into the sunset after that.
Yeah. And it really is a good, lesson for the Sixers as a whole to learn, whether that's Joel, whether that's Josh Harris. Like, the noise is the noise. We will be wrong. We will change our tune. We will make mistakes. We will push for things that make no sense. The only way you change the narrative is by winning, or is at least coming out there and being professional and doing what you have to do. And BG certainly showed that. And just Jalen. Like there's so much
For
scrutiny
sure.
that comes with being a quarterback.
100%.
A lot of people I guess there aren't that many from 2018 anymore, but like for him to have come close, not gotten it, gone through all the scrutiny, both last year, how it ended, and the start of this year, that's got to be a huge weight off of his shoulders. Not that he'd ever admit it, because he doesn't admit things like that, but it has to be a huge weight off of his shoulders.
Yeah, I'll go with because it's easy. Of course, we talked about the coaching, both Fangio and Sirianni, and I was watching a video from Sirianni at the party last night. Just everybody's talking all this stuff about me with the Bobby Brown song. My prerogative.
My prerogative, man. I love that song.
I had him fired just like a lot of people did at the beginning of the season too. So, but for me, I'll go with Barkley on this one, because for him to make that tough decision to leave New York. How tough is it to say I'm leaving and going to Philadelphia? Well, one is the rival. You know the rivalry. You were there for 5-6 years, so you know what that means. But he made the right call because he looked at the offensive line of what it was going to be, the attention with the skill players around him, and doing that. And he backed it. He more than backed it up. And then he broke the record of the all-time. While whoever feels the way they feel about him breaking Eric Dickerson's record, they got a championship. And he had an historic season, and then breaks Terrell Davis's record, the one that was left, and did it. And when you talk about leadership, when we compile those yards of 100 yards or whatever it was that he was away from, he probably could have got about 50 of those in that Giants game where they were blowing the Giants out in their first matchup and said, no, I'm good. Sirianni is cool. Let Kenny and Shipley get those reps right there. Let them finish out the game. He probably could have carved them up for 50 or 60 more yards to get closer to that record. Now, he didn't know that, but it was the being unselfish and letting them guys go out there and play. And it impacted his yard total. We know what happened in the Washington game where he probably would have broken it then too had Jalen played. But they sold out last night to stop him. He had like 56 yards total rushing. You think he cared? No.
He was shotgunning beers in the locker room.
Exactly.
I know he didn't care.
Exactly. So that was pretty cool, man. So I love the BG one. Certainly Jalen Hurts and the coaches as we talk about, but that Saquon Barkley story is an all-time story when it comes to a guy leaving, coming back, and all the people talking about that's not going to work. And then doing what we say about leadership. They don't pay running backs. They might draft them in the second and third round and hope that they pop, but trade for DeAndre Swift. No one really thought when those stories were leaking that stop playing. They're not signing Saquon Barkley to a big contract. They don't do that. They did it. They went against what they normally do, and it worked out.
I'll add to the Jalen one too. Like, so I've always loved the mobile quarterback, the run, like people call it whatever you want, running quarterback, mobile quarterback. There was always that long-standing idea, right? Those guys don't win. And it was, you had to be a pure drop back pocket passer. And like Jalen has taken a lot of grief for what people perceive as he can't do this and he needs to do that and he doesn't look like this guy. And like there's been a lot of things said about him. So I think for him to have the game that he did, after having, by the way, another great Super Bowl performance the last time we're there, makes basically one mistake and they lose, but that was not the reason they lost or anyone close. For him to come back and be that good once again in the Super Bowl, I thought was just that's the cherry on top of a great season, a great 3-year run that he's been on as the face of the team in so many ways. And so very happy for him and happy for my agendas that I'm sick of hearing people say you can only, think about it. Like Lamar Jackson coming into the league, like you should be a tight end or wide receiver.
That was
it's
crazy.
Like, I'm glad so much of that stuff is falling away and you can just look at it and say, it's not what somebody can't do. What can I do with the skills and the talent and the leadership and whatever he has? And, credit to Jalen for, frankly, it seems not worrying about any of that nonsense.
Yeah, it's great to see it. Let them continue to bend themselves into pretzels and trying to figure out why he's not good while he just lifts trophies.
Just gets W's, baby.
Isn't that the goal? Just get W's, man. Just because it's not how you want it to look doesn't mean it's not effective. And his teammates love it. So does his fan base. So everybody else, have at it. because he's better than your quarterback that you have in front of them because he has a trophy and they don't. All right, let's get to. We did not have a chance to get to it yesterday, Kyle. If you're up to it, we didn't even get your Kendrick Lamar thoughts. But
I mean, my guy did the Super Bowl and he stared at the camera and said, "Hey, Drake," and it was one of the funniest things. I almost fell off my couch.
The best part was when he was like, "Well, they like to sue," and it was like, "Oh, all right, cool." And
it was
cool.
Loved it. I can understand. I think the thing that people probably won't appreciate who don't listen to rap music is like he ad-libbed or redid a lot of those lyrics specifically so they didn't have to blank stuff out, and was just like, I'm sure he rehearsed these versions of it, but there basically was no backing track for 90% of that performance, where you see a lot of these, whether it's just a normal concert or a halftime show, it's like all lip syncing, or it's like a lot of lip syncing. And the part that blew my mind was him when he was like running down the field and still rapping. I was like, how is that even possible? Like if you listen to when they do the NFL film stuff, like Jordan Mailata, they got the one great clip of him yelling, "Go son, go son," to I think it was Barkley the one week. He's like huffing and puffing, and he's not rapping. He's saying 2 words. He's just running doing this. So I thought that was cool. But I'm just glad my guy got his moment, and now I'll get to see him not have to remix the songs for curse words when he comes to Philadelphia.
By the way, Jalen Carter smacking Patrick Mahomes in the face a couple of times. That was hilarious. He's like, "Oh, I know he's gonna get fined later on."
What did the 5 fingers say to the face? Slap.
Oh, man.
What a time.
It was a great time. Great stuff from last night. Great stuff from speaking with you yesterday, even though it was a tough Sixers loss, but got the Birds win. So since we skipped it yesterday, let's get to the world famous start off the week,
I had just forgotten about that game too, and you had to bring it up.
Roll call.
I'm not yelling darkness today.
Don't worry,
darkness, I know I saw you in here. Appreciate you, buddy.
What up, darkness?
My vocal cords not in good shape right now after yesterday. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us today. Of all days, you could be thinking about the Eagles, and you still kind of are here, but you had to think about the Sixers. That's pretty great. Martian Lynch, even though you're a Kendrick hater, I got to shout you out, buddy.
What up, Martian?
X-Man, Kyle Wright.
What up, X?
Jess with the Purple Heart hanging out with us.
Take a shot at the Dolphins players.
I Gavini came in late, who brought up the Serena Williams cameo, by the way. That was awesome.
She was doing this. I was surprised she was there.
I was surprised, and then she filmed a little video after. Like, I got in trouble for walking at Wimbledon. Right. I'm right at home now. So shout out to Serena Williams as well. Who else we got in here today? We got Remo K.
What up, Remo?
We got Big AD 97, who did point out all BG did was block everyone on Twitter that one time. I do remember that.
It was funny though.
I'm pretty sure I was blocked, and I never tweeted about Brandon Graham a single time that I can remember. So shout out to
you were writing about the team a little bit then, though, weren't you?
Yeah, but I think I would have only said positive things about him. Like when I was covering the Eagles in some capacity, he was really good. It wasn't the early years. Anyway, Yams Colangelo in the building. My girl Winona.
Hey, Nona.
Obviously hanging out with us today. There are a lot of Mellow 3-point hanging out with us today.
Threes, Mellow.
Dan Taylor, SB Cole.
What up, SB?
Foxy Jane, 88.
Foxy Jane?
Mom's grandchildren.
Okay.
Hello to Mom for hanging out with us as always. Eugene Ross. You better love somebody.
Better
DJ,
love somebody,
a.k.a.
love somebody.
Mr. Sandman.
Bring me a dream
INS.
that the Eagles will win, and they did. Came to life.
I think I'm about out of name reading today, everybody, because I
read like 5 names. Like, I'm done.
Listen, you guys
cool.
saw me come in with the Weekend at Bernie sunglasses on. It's been one of those days. You guys are here anyway, and I love you for that. If you could, on the way out, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. Oh, shout out AJ Jones, who I saw in here for
AJ.
Basically the whole
She's the
show.
best. AJ's the best.
Hello to AJ. Thank you for coming in.
By the way, go get the new Bird shirts.
Oh, yeah. If you're still here, we have a big
gold
drop.
standard
Look
collection.
At that. The theme, the gold standard.
I already ordered mine.
I'm getting one of those birds with the 2 Lombardi
that's
trophies
what I ordered
shirts.
too. Yeah.
I'm getting one of those. So go to the ALLCITY store.
Yep.
check out the Gold Standard collection. Get yourself some merch. You'll be wearing that proudly for the rest of the year.
Look at Martian.
And hit the thumbs up button on the way out to say thank you to super producer Bree for being the best and for being here just like we are the day after the Super Bowl. We'll be back for pregame and postgame tomorrow night. Until then,
You didn't say a thing.
take care.
Bell icon.
Go Birds.
See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.